I was at IKEA with my mom one day, and this is crazy to think of. This would never happen today, but they had a table outside of IKEA, and when kids are coming in shopping with their parents, be like, "Can we take a Polaroid of your kid for a casting thing?" They were doing that. Took a Polaroid of me. My Polaroid got picked off a pile, and I got this job to do a Pizza Hut commercial, which was then seen by the casting agent, the casting director for Forrest Gump. And I got called in to read with Tom Hanks, and that was my first real job. And, getting to watch Tom Hanks up close, the way that he worked and everything. And even at that age, that made an impression on me of like how focused he was. He was looking at the script and he was, getting into character. That, at the time I probably wouldn't have been able to put it into words, but like it made an impact on me. And, that's something I still remember to this day.
We live in a complex and ever-changing world, a place that is maybe harder than ever to successfully navigate. The answer is surely to be brave, but it's also to seek and be open to guidance. Mentors are the one consistent through line in the lives of all accomplished people, myself included. So welcome to Mentor Buffet, a feast for those, like me, curious about who helped the most successful among us succeed. Haley Joel Osment has been an actor his whole life.
Because when you're a kid, your imagination just runs wild all the time. And we're, I think, constantly trying to recapture a bit of that today when you're trying to come up with a story or come up with an idea for a character.
He was Forrest Jr. in Forrest Gump. He was the kid in The Sixth Sense. He was in the Steven Spielberg film AI. He's been acting his whole life, and he's learning the whole way.
With a lot of the people I've worked with in my career, sometimes I struggle to distill what I learned from somebody like, Steven Spielberg or working with Tom Hanks or something into a piece of advice or something that they gave me, because it really doesn't come through in that way. It's more just having a front row seat to seeing how this person makes a movie.
Haley and I got to work together in my most recent movie, Not an Artist.
Working on your movie was a different challenge for me.
And getting to know him, it's so easy to see he's smart and devoted and curious, and he has so much to share. Here's my conversation with Haley Joel Osment.
Well, when it comes to mentorship, definitely the most important relationship I had of that kind was getting to work with my dad growing up, because my dad was an actor. He managed a theater. That was the reason that my parents were born in Birmingham, Alabama, and they moved out to Los Angeles in 1985 because my dad had a friend that wanted him to manage this theater on Santa Monica Boulevard. So he had a lot of experience with that. He had studied theater in college at West Georgia College and had fallen in love with it. He'd wanted to be a commercial airline pilot and had a pilot's license and wanted to fly. And then I forget the exact story of how I think he saw a play in college and wanted to check that out, and then did the theater program there and just totally fell in love with it. So they moved to LA in the 80s. And when I was born, he was running that theater. And then I was at IKEA with my mom one day, and this is crazy to think of. This would never happen today, but they had a table outside of IKEA. And when kids are coming in shopping with their parents, be like, "Can we take a Polaroid of your kid for a casting thing?" They were doing that. Took a Polaroid of me. My Polaroid got picked off a pile, and I got this job to do a Pizza Hut commercial, which was then seen by the casting agent, the casting director for Forrest Gump. And I got called in to read with Tom Hanks, and that was my first real job. So that kind of happened by accident. But having my dad, who really, knew a lot about acting and was helping me as a 4-year-old, with your limited understanding as a 4-year-old of, all the nuts and bolts of making a movie or doing a television show, and working with him throughout the rest of my childhood was just such a important relationship, and really defined, my approach to acting. I'm learning to this day, and, you approach things differently as an adult, but really he set the foundation of how to approach a character and, how to read scripts and come up with ideas like that. And it's really cool when you get to have that relationship with your parent too, or something that we got to
Yeah.
like work together on all these really cool things as I was growing up. So I feel very, very grateful for that. And I think that's definitely what set me on a path to being able to succeed.
You get this phone call. Your dad probably gets the call, right? And he shares with you that they're interested, and he already knows what this is all about, but you don't. You're not seeking this out. This,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And do you feel like the first moment was like excitement about somebody believing in you, or excitement to connect with your dad, or like what? And again, you're 4, like maybe you don't know this, but can you feel any of that, or do you like recall what it felt like? Or
Yeah. With the limited understanding that a 4-year-old would have of it, I just remember just being on set was a fun place to be,
on
like,
Forrest
and
Gump?
on commercial, or well,
Oh, on
all the way
the
back to
Pizza Hut.
commercials. I think I did a pizza commercial and a McDonald's commercial. That's a really funny set because there's all this food that you can't eat, and you're like, but I'm in a McDonald's.
Wait, why? Is it plastic
Because
food?
it's all props, so they can't be having kids eating all the fries
But it's
while they're
real
shooting. I think so. Yeah, it's not like I think it's Dairy Queen where they're like the food photography. They put like mashed potatoes in the ice cream cone instead of ice cream, so it doesn't melt. I think that's a real thing. Uh, but yeah, with Forrest Gump, it was an epic set. I mean, the Gump House, and I remember my costume fitting for that. I went into this giant warehouse. Gary Sinise was there because he was doing his costume fitting at the same time, and they just had thousands and thousands of Vietnam War era army uniforms and helmets, and like, seeing stuff like that really makes an impression on you as a kid, where it's a fun place to be where things like that are happening, and getting to watch Tom Hanks up close, the way that he worked and everything. And even at that age, that made an impression on me of like how focused he was. He was looking at the script, and he was, getting into character. That, at the time I probably wouldn't have been able to put it into words, but like it made an impact on me. And, that's something I still remember to this day.
What was it like to be the young one in a place where you had such a steep learning curve and you needed to be, side by side these people, but they know that you're a kid?
Yeah, I guess luckily I didn't have too much dialogue to memorize. So like there was, it was a manageable amount of work, and it was not too difficult for me to do my job. But there, I had this teacher at NYU who would tell us in theater school, she's like, all my exercises I try on my 5-year-old first, because there is a cool thing where kids are not self-critical in that way that we are as adults, of like thinking of how we're perceived, and like you get really honest, natural performances from kids under the right circumstances, because that's what they're like in day-to-day life. So it's funny, as you get older, you're in a lot of ways you're trying to capture that kind of freedom and lack of concern about how you look from the outside. So yeah, when you're having kids like play and be creative like that, that really is good for the camera, because it's the opposite of a kid who's been taught to perform for the camera at that age.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. When you learn from someone at the highest level, doing something at the highest level, do you learn because they teach you, or do you learn because they are just being themselves right around you and invite you to like, do you learn because you wanted to learn? Like you took it.
Yeah, I think it happens more through observation, because with a lot of the people I've worked with in my career, sometimes I struggle to distill what I learned from somebody like, Steven Spielberg, or working with Tom Hanks or something, into a piece of advice or something that they gave me, because it really doesn't come through in that way. It's more just having a front row seat to seeing how this person makes a movie.
Mhm.
And even, you're not taking notes on the specific technical things that they're doing. There's just a feeling that's created on a set when you know that work is going really well. The entire shoot of The Sixth Sense was like this too, where everybody's like, this feels really good. It feels like we're doing something really good here. And everybody, when you feel a cast and crew working together as a unit like that, and everybody just going like, as long as we just stay out of our own way and, just make the script, because the script is really strong, then we're going to have something special. And that's the sort of thing, like, where if I got the chance to direct or produce, it's like, I want to create that kind of feeling on set. How do I have that environment where people are feeling that kind of momentum and that kind of thing. Specifically with Tom Hanks, one good example of how generous they were in working with me. And throughout my career, I got very lucky that I didn't work with a lot of actors or directors who would use tricks or try and manipulate a performance out of kids. Cause I think there are some very good directors who kind of, use trickery or something
What would a
to
trick
pull it out
be?
of. Well, like, a totally benign one was in The Shining, like Stanley Kubrick, like didn't tell, I forget the actor's name, but the kid who played, the son in that movie, he didn't know he was in a horror movie. So that kind
Oh.
of like siloing information, and it works for that because then he's not pushing the horror elements of it in his performance. But I got very lucky and worked with directors who would talk to me like an adult and explain things to me, and not dumb it down or anything. And I remember when we were shooting the scene at the end of Forrest Gump, where very end of Forrest Gump, where we're sitting on the bench and the bus comes and I'm reading the Curious George book. I forget what the original dialogue was, but Tom and Robert Zemeckis wanted to change it. So it had been raining and raining and raining all morning. And this AD came over to my trailer in these big waders and like picked me up and walked through this like flooded base camp over to Robert Zemeckis' trailer. And he and Tom Hanks were in there. And Tom Hanks wrote out the new dialogue for the scene in a red marker on yellow legal pad and was like, these are your new lines, like go learn these lines. And I still have that piece of paper now. That actually survived the fire. I took that frame off the wall. So yeah.
That's really, really cool. Merrell is so crazy versatile. I wear Merrells on all my runs, on the roads, on the trails. I walk my dog Bernini in Merrells. I wear Merrells to business meetings, and I even just wore the Speed Arc Surge Boa to my movie premiere in Hollywood, baby. I walked down the red carpet in these bad boys. I especially love the Boa lacing system and the Matrix upper. And these shoes have this dual density foam midsole, and that's where the bounciness and the durability comes from. For over 40 years, Merrell has been the global leader in hike, innovating, and crafting footwear designed for adventures of all speeds and sizes. Merrell believes in sharing the power of outside with everyone. From boots to hiking sneakers to trail running shoes, every silhouette is designed to deliver unmatched comfort and performance. For a limited time, we're partnering with Merrell to give you an exclusive offer of 25% off your first purchase order using code MentorBuffet25 when you check out on Merrell.com/Alexi. You can find my favorite Merrell shoes and gear at Merrell.com/Alexi.
When you're a kid, I mean, your imagination just runs wild all the time. And we're, I think, constantly trying to recapture a bit of that today when you're trying to come up with a story or come up with an idea for a character. And it's like, it's so effortless as a kid. And now there's a lot more static and noise and distractions that you have to work to push out to just think of, free creative thoughts. So it's much more of a challenge now because we got so much more stuff in our heads than when you're a kid.
That's so what is in our heads though? Like, why is it such a limitation to
The
us now?
news and the people you're going to see later tonight and, thinking about that girl. I mean, it's just, and it's not bad. I mean, it's part of being an adult of that. You've got, just more going on. But I know that it takes me a long time, particularly with writing something, like just to get a solid hour or two of writing. I was like, I need the entire day to create that kind of space for myself.
Yeah, it's like we have to clear out, like there's a few layers of it, right? We have to clear out the producer in us. Maybe that comes first. And the producer is like the one that's like surviving your life and paying your bills and getting to the appointments and answering the texts. So like, right, there's like the manager producer in us.
Yeah.
I don't know what it would be called. And then maybe there's the like fear layer of like whatever, the boyfriend, the girlfriend, the whatever, the
news,
news, like reality. Like,
the news has been so great recently.
Oh my God, it's terrible. Well, and that's why it's it's terrible, and it can feel very selfish to even want to push that stuff out in favor of imagination and creativity, or it can feel it's difficult.
It's weird, like especially now when there's so many like high stakes, terrible things happening. Like, I definitely feel like people should feel less guilty about being like, I'm gonna take a break and not think about that for a little while. I'll definitely be thinking about it later. Like, I'll
Yeah.
definitely be letting it stress me out at some point. But to do our job, I mean, I love working on things because then that enables you to be like, sorry, can't do anything else. I'm doing this like this
Yeah.
summer. Like,
Well, you left when the fires happened and devastated your entire family,
yeah,
and you went to a film set.
yeah, yeah.
I mean, that when I called
was-
you, dude, that
yeah.
was so you guys just decided to go back to set because you had no home
Yeah.
to go back. You
Luckily, like and I believe still I'm the only person whose house was destroyed. So I would have felt bad if it was a lot of other people and there was things that they needed to do. But it was a very small independent film. So luckily it was a number of people who could get on a group chat and be like, is everybody okay to do this? Like, we're not going to pressure anybody to do it because, this is a really crazy circumstance. But a movie like that, we also... we were really happy with how the movie was going. We just had a couple days left at these locations. And I think we just understood it's like, if we don't do this now, we may not get the chance to go back and finish it. And we don't want to lose this movie that we've been creating. So that felt very good to have done something productive in a week that was just so, destructive to, entire towns. And I think I'll be able to, once it comes out, and I think it'll go to festivals this year, it'll be nice to look back at that and go like, well, out of this, horrific event, like something positive came out of it.
Yeah, I feel like you've been someone who's moved during times of like static or,
The timing has been absolutely hilarious because I lived in New York for 15 years. In 2019, I was like, you know what? The responsible thing to do would be to move back to Los Angeles, like stay close to the industry. I want to be directing and producing and developing stuff. Let's get back there and do it. I got my place in LA on March 16th, 2020, which was the day of the first lockdowns.
Yeah,
so then immediately we were in the pandemic for a very long time. Had this very intense pandemic relationship that ended up going nowhere. Then things started picking up after the worst of the pandemic. Then there was the strike, which I totally supported, but that put everything on hold for a very long time. And then we've had some political upheaval, and this house that had been my refuge during the pandemic was completely destroyed in the Eaton fire. So now it's like, all right, like I guess I'm getting a message to not settle down and be responsible. So it's I have a good mindset right now because I'm back to where I was before I moved back to LA 5 years ago, where it was just like, send me anywhere. Like
That's how you feel.
6 years in South Africa. I signed up for a show there in 2016. I was like, I'll go anywhere in the world now because every time I try and domesticate myself, the world really has been punching me in the mouth every time that happens. So.
I was going to ask what you would have told like the little kid you about what is the therefore of this, and you just said it. You're like, therefore, like therefore, like just kind of like lean into the like, it's not a lazy river. It's quite an aggressive one.
I love lazy rivers.
I do too.
Yeah, when was the last time you were in a lazy river?
Oh my God, I don't know. I mean, it had to be a water park, you know, which had to be 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Right.
I think it's been that long for me too.
Yeah.
And I talk about it a lot with my friend who I was in a lazy river with the last time, I think in the Bahamas 12 years ago. And we were thinking, we're like, this is great. This is really what you want.
Sometimes I drink and sometimes I don't, but I've never taken an intentional break from alcohol until just recently. I made a conscious effort and just finished my first ever dry January, leaning on Go Brewing as my non-alcoholic alternative. I decided to take a break from alcohol because I was having trouble healing this broken collarbone from the Olympics in Paris this summer, and opting for a Go Brewing non-alcoholic beer helped me keep my inflammation down, and my energy and sleep has been a lot better too. I've kind of fallen in love with the Jab Jab Grapefruit IPA. It's my favorite right now. It's my citrus fix in the winter, and you will love it. It's tangy and refreshing, and you've got to give it a try. If you ever thought non-alcoholic beer couldn't deliver, Go Brewing will prove you wrong. Head to gobrewing.com/Alexi to get 15% off your order. Because sometimes the point isn't about what you're giving up, it's about what you're gaining. Do you look up to Tom Hanks?
Oh, absolutely. And I was just watching it's the SNL 50th anniversary coming
Yeah.
up. So there's been a lot of those like little specials and documentaries about it. And one of them, covered the fact that he's one of the, most beloved hosts of that show. And it's because of his attitude that he brings to all of the sets that he goes to. He did not say this to me, but I saw in an interview, and I think it's a very great advice for an actor. Where he's like, your job is to show up on time with a head full of ideas. And you're
Oh,
like,
wow.
if you do that, you're gonna have a good time, and you're gonna have a lot to contribute to it. And that's something I think about that a lot, because you can prepare what's on the page, but there's always another level of like having, more information, or, working on a movie that's improvised like we did. It's like, I, was taking a lot of notes of just having certain, threads of ideas. So like if we were rolling for a really long time, it's like you want to have some stuff to be able to, add more momentum to the scene. So yeah, I think the first time, I mean, you can improvise, little tags to scenes and stuff like that. But the first like real improv I did on camera was with Matt in this movie called Sex Ed. We had this credit scene where it's just him and me talking in a office for like 10 minutes. I loved that. And now I've had the opportunity to do a lot more improv influence things because it's been so influential in film and television. And it's just the best. It's working on your movie was a different challenge for me, and it was a really good time, particularly with the RZA. If you get to improvise with the RZA, it's pretty.
Yeah, because
that's one of those things where you're like, I did some cool stuff.
yeah, and he's so smart. I mean, you're so smart, and he's so smart. So to be like, put these intelligence in front of one another and have them like challenge each other within the confines of like a created, like a false reality.
Yeah,
it's fun.
Do you remember sitting on the porch while we were setting up a shot one day, and he was just sitting there kind of like meditating or being quiet? We were just talking about stuff we wanted to do when the pandemic was over, and the RZA goes, listen. We're like, yes. And he's like, you need to go to the Four Seasons. Yes, we have to tell the story. I have to tell the story. And he's like, there's a movie theater across the street. You need to go get the champagne and the strawberries to your room. And we're like, all right. And
go to the
like,
Four
and then
Seasons.
Go to the Four Seasons. Then go across the street with your girl and see a movie. Do that. And we're like,
okay,
I will.
And then what? And then what? And then he goes, then you go back to the Four Seasons. And he goes, and you make a mess in the hotel room.
Yes.
He goes, sometimes you have to make a mess in the hotel room with your girl. You got to bring your girl to the Four Seasons. You got to make a mess in the hotel room. And we were like, okay. And he was like, just do that.
Yep.
Do that. And we were like, okay. And the only thing I've done at the Four Seasons is I got a facial with Sierra Bravo there once.
Oh, nice.
It was really fun.
It a good spa?
Yeah. We didn't make a mess. They made a mess on our face, which is a facial. I'm sorry, it's a facial. They pop your pimples. It's gross.
Nice.
But yeah. So okay. So take me to, like, obviously this is what's so like, people will never shake that I'm an Olympian. Like, they'll never shake that you're the Sixth Sense kid, right? And they use that phrase, and I'm always like, okay, yeah. But what do you remember about learning from the Sixth Sense?
That I was 10 when we did that movie, and I was sort of getting to an age where I did have a full understanding of what it meant and what my future would be like, that this was a job I could do forever. I mean, in the early years of my career, I was still going like, I'm going to be a marine biologist when I grow up.
Oh, wow.
So, and that,
was that the thing you wanted to be?
I did, but like, oh God, I wish I could remember this guy's name. The makeup artist who did the bald cap for me when I was dying of cancer on Ally McBeal. I was telling him when he's putting the bald cap on, that I want to be a marine biologist. And he's like, yeah, I wanted to be a marine biologist too. He's like, all they would do is, I forget if he was in school. He's like, they would send me this shaker full of blended like sea creature parts, and I put it under a microscope and I just analyzed this sludge. He's like, you don't want to be a marine biologist? I was like, oh, okay. I thought I was going to be swimming with dolphins. Like, that was the aspect of marine biology that you wanted to do, is, hang out with whales and dolphins. But you can just get a boat in Hawaii and look at whales and dolphins. So
you learn that. The things we learn from where we don't expect. You're like spilling your dreams to this, like, and little does he know he can change your life too. Like, he could have said it was.
It was great, and I should
Yeah.
quit acting. So, but I'm glad he said what he said. So we get to Sixth Sense. The audition process was the most intensive I had done to that point because I went and read for the casting director. Then I got called back for Kathleen Kennedy and Frank Marshall, and then there was a third round to go read for everybody, and Night Shymalan came for that one. And the audition scenes for that movie were really intense scenes. It was all the craziest scene from the movie. So having this happen over a couple of weeks and having to like keep those scenes fresh and do them over and over again, like that was a good lead in to shooting the movie because it was by far the most challenging thing I'd done to that point. And it was just a terrific experience because cast and crew were great. Everybody worked together really well. We had the incredible luxury of rehearsing for like 2 weeks. We all got to Philadelphia, hung out. We would meet with Night and talk about things, and then we would do like small groups. So like one day me and Bruce would go rehearse scenes with Night, and then one day Bruce and Olivia Williams would go rehearse their scenes, and then me and Toni Collette would rehearse our scenes with Night. And just the luxury of having it be so prepared before we started shooting, it just set us up for a successful experience. And it was also a shoot where the contrast between how creepy and dark, the subject matter was and how much fun we were having. We were I think they've demolished it recently, but the old convention center in Philadelphia, this creepy old building where we were building our sets with all these really scary dark hallways. We had this set where they draped plastic over the entire set so they could pump in cold air so you could see our breath for the scenes where that was supposed to happen. And I just fell in love with the process in a new way doing that one because it was very hard work, but you just felt such a sense of accomplishment nailing these scenes and going like, we got something good going on here. So that's a feeling you definitely want to chase.
What were the conversations like with the director, the one-on-one? Like, what are you talking about?
This almost connects back to Forrest Gump a little bit, but the very first meeting when I first got to Philadelphia in Knight's office, how did he phrase it? He was like just describing his approach to the movie, and he's like, in a horror movie where a character's going down a hallway and a hand is on their shoulder and they turn around, but it's just their friend. He's like, we're not doing any of that shit. Like, we're not doing any of the cheap cliche horror things. We're like, all right, cool. And he's like, I forget. I remember him saying this, but I forget what specifically he was referring to. But he used this phrase. He's like, we're not gonna like hold the hands of like the Forrest Gumps in the audience.
Oh my God. Which is such a sweet,
I love that. Yeah.
Yeah. You're like, the audience will be chasing us.
Yeah.
We're not, right?
Yeah. You're not going to just spell it out for them, and that's been the hallmark of his movies now is that he's got some tricks up his sleeve. He's got a mystery that, it's up to you to figure out. So that was cool seeing that from the inside, and also crazy now because he was 28 when we were doing this.
Right.
And, I'm at the age then where everybody is, older than me and, I'm a kid and everybody's adult. But now looking back on it, I was like, that was young to have so much confidence and composure. And even though it was a pretty smooth shoot, as I remember it, like it's still a lot of pressure, just having all that money and all that writing on you and your idea. And I just loved being on a team with that guy. And then, having a superstar Bruce Willis on set being real. I mean, it just, all the elements just combined to make it like a really great place to go to work.
That's awesome. Yeah. Did you learn from Bruce Willis? Did you feel like you guys were teammates? Was he a mentor to you?
Yeah. Just legendary charm with that guy and just seeing how funny he was I had never really seen anybody like that before, of somebody who was like born to be a movie star. Like there are people who are really, really good at being famous. And it was like, we need that in the world. Like,
because it's good, because it makes people happy.
It makes people so happy. Yeah. Like everywhere he went, like the way that he handled fame was very inspiring. And I had most recently, I got to do that movie Blink Twice with Zoe Kravitz. and Channing Tatum. And those were two people where I was like, thank God we have movie stars like that. Because like they're just, it's not a put on, it's totally genuine, and they enjoy who they are and what they're doing. You're like, that's cool.
Right. And you're also at an age where you're deciding to like keep leaning into this. You're 10 or 11?
10, yeah.
10?
Yeah.
So you're seeing people around you that make you feel positive about what you're doing.
Yeah.
Which, I've sat down with actors who have experience in childhood, and it's not always like that, right?
I know. Yeah. I felt at the time I was, because even at that age, not my parents, but like you would hear like, stories of, when it's gone bad, that's kind of floating
in
around.
everything, in sports, in everything.
And like, so I knew that I was fortunate because I was like, I even now, like, I can't really, you love hearing those horror stories people have of like disaster productions because it can be really entertaining, but I never really had an experience like that. I never even really worked with anybody who was like a problem or anything. I've been very, very
lucky,
fortunate with that. Yeah.
Do you think that it's like really lucky that you weren't in those circumstances, or do you think that you like do your research and like make, or like lean on your reps, or like lean on other people to help you make decisions? Because people don't mean to end up in bad circumstances, right?
And yeah, and I should say that it's like all the names that people bring up of, when it went wrong for people who acted as a kid, like pretty much all the time is like, well, they had parents who took advantage of them or like didn't look out for them, or like that's usually the factor that happened with them. And I got very lucky because not only did I, have great parents, but they also were like suspicious of the industry and very much like any day you wake up and you decide you don't want to do this, like you can just go back to school and not do it. So knowing, I think a lot of kids are put in the position of like, you got to make this work. Like, this is our shot. And like, I didn't have that kind of pressure or, have people saying that to me. It was truly just like, do it because you love doing the job. So I think that made the difference for me. And I worked on sets with directors that and producers who I think were very aware of when it's been bad for kids and who were all determined to not have a set that felt unsafe or, that wasn't a healthy place to be. And I think Steven probably more than anybody, like, cause he came up in the 70s, when you just hear insane stories of the way people would act on sets or the way that people would take advantage of each other and how sleazy things could be. And I think from the earliest part of his career, and particularly with E.T., where he felt very, paternal towards those kids, where he's like, I want my sets to be a safe place that are, a good place for kids. And they are. So
how else did he make the set a positive place for you? Or how did he just live in a way that was like just an add to your life and add to everybody's?
So much. I mean, AI was like a 2-year experience from our first meeting to, rehearsing for that and preparing for that and learning how to scuba dive and going to rehearse at his house in the Hamptons over the summer. Like, it was just such a long, wonderfully long process. That was one of the most influential experiences that I've had. And I'm reminded of, I saw this interview with, I believe the director is Michelle MacLaren. She directed Breaking Bad and a bunch of other things. And she also directed an episode of Game of Thrones. And when she was asked to do Game of Thrones, she called her friend who had directed an episode and was like, what, should I do this? Like, is this like is this a big risk to go do something of that scale? And he goes, Michelle, it's a Ferrari, get in and drive it. And I was like, that's kind of what a Spielberg set is like. You're just like, enjoy it, because this is as good as it gets on just the experience of making it. Because obviously he has, all the resources in the world, a crew that he works with over and over and over again. So everybody knows the shorthand, and it's just a machine that runs so well. And being on the inside of that is just a trip. So
it's like you're joining an experience.
Yeah.
And it sounds like that advice really points to like you're here, you were already invited here.
Yeah.
Right. And you should just, you have the invitation, right?
Yeah.
And just enjoy it.
Yeah.
Do you think that that's why you have so much fun on sets?
Yeah.
Like,
and that it really is fun for me. And I've had friends, good actors, who just fall out of love with it and who just like, and obviously there's a lot of stuff the frustrating thing about our job is that such a small percentage of it is actually doing the job, and the rest of it is hustling to get the job or promoting it or doing this or taking meetings or auditioning. And like the percentage of the stuff that you actually love to do out of all the time that you spend is quite small. And I've had friends who are just like, I just don't want to deal with that crap anymore. But for me, it's still worth it to put up with the non-acting parts of it that are a drag, because once you get on set, you're like, it's incredible. I saw another, I can think of a lot of advice that people did not give directly to me, but that I read elsewhere. But I remember Paul Thomas Anderson being like, yeah, I'll just shoot all day. He's like, that's what we're here for. He's like, I'll just shoot around the clock. Like, it's fun. Like,
yeah, it's
we're
what
not
people
trying to get out of here. Like,
yeah, we're trying to do this.
Yeah.
Yeah, you really love it. And it seems like even when you're like in those in-between moments, when you're getting the feedback, when you're building, when you're making changes, you embrace that stuff.
Yeah.
And I think probably a lot of people are afraid to make mistakes. So like that part of it is like it feels evaluative, or like it doesn't you don't ever strike me as someone who feels like there's a problem with adaptation, right? With building it, with like discovering, even with having I don't know, like when we were doing stuff like bad takes, it's like it's part of it.
You gotta have that. You gotta have, like, and I was just doing something recently where it's like you take a big swing on the first take because you gotta find where the
boundaries,
where the outfit is.
Where did you? Was that on
feel it out? I did an episode of Poker Face. And I was playing kind of an outlandish character. And I just remember there was one. Oh, no, maybe it was this most recent movie I was doing. But I just tried something on this one big scene where I was like, I didn't even know I was consciously doing it. But afterwards, I was like, all right, I had to get that version out of my system so that I can do it right now.
Do you feel like, because I think some people be so afraid do you like qualify? Do you just do it? Like when you do something that might be pushing the boundaries in a scene and that first take, do you warn anyone, or do you just do it and trust that is that what you were always taught to do? Like,
it depends. And a big challenge with that now, because so often, on a lot of projects you don't have a lot of takes and you don't have a lot of time to do things. So the struggle is like, if I'm only going to get one or two takes of this, do I make sure I get the safe take? So I do one that I know I can live with, before taking a risk of doing something different or saying, something in an alternative way, if that's the only take I'm going to get.
You're almost like a bridge between times too, because like you really have lived through like periods of time in the world, but like in the entertainment industry, when there was like a certain way that it was happening, it was like an era, and then there was kind of this, and it's moving into another era, and you have like truly straddled in a way that I think very few people will ever experience that. Yeah. Right?
I really feel that. And I feel like that comes with like responsibility, because, I love being a member of the Academy because of the work that they do about like the history of film and preserving that history and like, knowing the legacy of these things. I mean, like, I met like Sid Caesar and Gregory Peck, and like, I have this, little bit of a connection to a, completely, past era of movie making. And that feels very special to me.
Yeah. And you have a voice, because like you have a like it's not it's partly your credentials, but it's also just like the awareness of how people see your experience means you know about things that are just like fairy taled now. Like someone might talk about how it was, but you really lived how it was. Yeah. And so whatever you're going to bring into the future as a director that you liked is truly because you experienced it and it was good. So I'm really excited.
Thanks. I'm excited too. Yeah.
Cool. That was really cool.
And now we eat the candy? Yes.
If you're enjoying Mentor Buffet, follow Voicing Change for more inspirational and truly life-affirming content from shows like Soul Boom, The Proof, Feel Better, Live More, and the Rich Roll podcast. Just go to voicingchange.media. That's voicingchange.media for a beautiful selection of productive and positive shows.